Excellent. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or good evening. I apologize. Welcome to the Airdrie City Council meeting for June the 19th. And just want to remind everyone who hasn't been to City Hall before, we have exits just on the other side of this wall. Of course, the one that you came through, if there is an incident here, we'll muster over at the ATB, and obviously the council meeting would be rescheduled. We have bathrooms just to my left again, just on the other side of the wall. And from there, we're going on to minutes. 4.1, Councillor Hunter, please.
So, everybody had a chance to read the minutes of the regular meeting of June 5th, 2017. If there's no errors or omissions, I will make a motion to accept.
Great, thank you. Comments or questions? Being none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, sir. Consent agenda. Anyone wishes to see any of those items on the regular agenda? Yes, Councillor Coulson.
Item 5.3, please.
5.3. Okay. Sharon, I just had a quick question on 5.1, but I'm guessing that the chair of Airdrie Housing Limit can answer that. Do I need to pull that off to ask that question?
Yes, Your Worship, you would need to.
Okay, so I'd ask 5.1 as well. Councillor Chapman, would you mind making that motion to move those two items, please?
Your Worship, yes, if we could receive 5.2 for information.
Yep.
And if we could move 5.1 and 5.3 to the regular agenda, please.
Excellent, thank you. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. So we'll go with 5.1 first. And it's really, I don't know if, I see Shelley's sitting there. It's just really around your year in review. And in the first two paragraphs, we're talking about, obviously, the new development. I was wondering if you could update council with any new time frames as to where we are in the process. I know we talked about it probably 6 months ago, I'm guessing. Would just like to know how the progress is going for the second floor, and if you're any closer to moving forward with the development, please. Thank you very much for coming up, Shelley. Sorry, and that, for everybody here, that's Shelley Sweet, the Executive Director for Airdrie Housing Limited.
Hi, I will do the best I can. We have, as I mentioned in the report, it was quite a disappointment, and we have spent quite a bit of time over the past year potentially exploring other opportunities for partnership with various types of organizations that we have felt would be a good fit with that type of building. Unfortunately, none of them has worked out to this point. We have one other option that we're still exploring with the current building as designed. However, since the housing assessment has recently come out, the board has met with an eye to a strategic review with that housing assessment in mind, and would like an opportunity to more formally present their thoughts and feelings on a go-forward basis with a formal letter in the next couple of months.
Any other questions for Shelley? Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciate the update, Shelley. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. I'd like to invite up Derry now, please. welcome. And whenever you're ready,
If I may,
Councillor
Your Worship.
Coulson. Yes, oh,
Did you-
sorry, we are going to receive this for information. I apologize, Councillor Chapman.
Your worship, motion to accept for information, please.
Thank you. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Councillor Coulson, please.
Thank you. I'm just trying to load the presentation. This is taking forever. But basically in the report, I was a little bit, I think that the intent of my motion was perhaps missed, because I understand that we have reciprocal and sharing agreements with Rocky View Schools. But I guess my confusion lies in why organizations are contacting, I think, a lot of council members that sit up here about having a hard time finding gym space for peak hours, which would be in the evenings. Oh, thank you. So it just, the report, it's great that it says that all of those schools are available within city limits, but we know that they're not booking all of those schools. So moving forward, I guess it was my hope that when we're looking at building a second facility, a big rec facility, that perhaps we look more at how the schools can play a role. Those are community facilities as well. I guess I would just like to hear what you have to say about that.
Through your worship. So we did an initial consultation with the Rocky View schools in our annual meeting with them. We spoke with the Calgary Catholic School, and we attempted to contact the 3 private schools within the city of Airdrie. So with the Rocky View schools, they have a new scheduling system that they call School Dude. And they have also hired some resources to manage that scheduling system. They currently are at full capacity of their facilities. There are 13 schools that are available for rent. And it is always at peak time. So it's from, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night till 9:30 in the evening. So they do 36 unique community groups that they support. So from the dialogue we had with them, that their spaces are at full capacity. So when we contacted the Calgary Catholic School Board to see if there was an opportunity to become their booking agent, is how we understood the request from council, is they didn't necessarily have an interest in us becoming a booking agent at this time. But we did commit to them to have further connection with them maybe in the fall about a reciprocal agreement discussion. So they have indicated that right now they're pretty busy with graduations and final exams, but they would welcome some more conversation in the fall. When we spoke with the 3 private schools within the city of Airdrie, 1 rents space, so the space is not their own to rent out in the evening. The facility that they rent does open it up to community groups in the evening. 1 school, their head office is out of Edmonton and did not return our calls. And the 3rd school, they book their space, their gym space, 3 nights out of the 5 nights. So they don't rent space on the weekends. As of right now, they're quite able to manage those 3 groups that they support, and so there wasn't a real interest in us becoming a booking agent on their behalf.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It does, but through the chair, I guess the focus of the report and the digging was more about us becoming their booking agent. Whereas I thought I was a little more clear that I thought there was a great partnership to be had to make sure that those gymnasiums are booking out on evenings and weekends and making it more available for people who are saying these gymnasiums are sitting empty. I have a school 2 blocks away from me, and I know that there isn't something going on there every night of the week, not even maybe one night of the week. So I guess I'll leave it in your court. Rocky View responded with how they could, but I think moving forward, if we're looking at another facility, that there's empty gymnasium space in this city that could be utilized now. But again, I guess that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, Derry, did you want to comment? Thank you.
Through your worship, I just wanted to propose that we have developed a very strong ongoing conversation with Rocky View schools. When we have a group that's looking for space that we can't accommodate, we contact Rocky View schools and vice versa. So if there is a community group that is struggling to find space within the city, they can certainly contact our bookings office, and we will do our best to work with Rocky View schools to see if we can find space for them or at our facility, whichever works best for them and their needs.
Thank you, Derek. I think we have Councillor Chapman, please.
Thank you, Worship. Through the chair, one thing I just did find interesting about this report, I was looking at the arenas, aquatics, gym fieldhouse, the total hours they were booked. I'm looking here in 2016 for the arenas, the total hours they were booked was 111.5 hours, 45% of what they were allotted. Is that how that's working? So they had 250 hours available, they're only using 45%. Am I reading that properly?
Through your worship, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter.
So through the chair, I can, so I know there was the Airdrie Filipino Association was interested in getting a basketball thing going, and they were very successful, and I put them in touch with AKCS, and they, now my understanding is they have regular games and whatnot there. So it does happen. Some of them, I think, express frustration, but they don't always come back to us and say, I just found out because I was in Tim Hortons, and they said, oh, there's that guy, and they said, oh, by the way, we got the school. So a lot of times they might get the space and not come back and tell us, so it does work out sometimes. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Derek? There being none, thank you very much. Councillor Chapman, please.
Motion to accept for information, Your Worship.
Thank you. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We have no appointments and presentations tonight. Public question period. Invite any member of the public to please come forward. If you have any questions for council, welcome. Mr. McKenzie, how are you?
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Just right over to that red microphone. You can turn that one on. There we go.
Mayor Brown, honorable council members, I'm Roy McKenzie. I have brought to the attention a very dangerous situation on East Lake Crescent. The unloading of vehicles on a narrow roadway that should be widened. I have spoke to Kent Rupert, Lauren Stevens, the TAC team, Rhonda Day, Municipal Enforcement, and I also spoke to City Council. That was done in measurements. I guess it was not understood, or I done a bad job of presenting it. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and I only have 5 minutes. So I'll drop a picture off with you. My question is, when will this situation be rectified? Hopefully, before someone gets hurt. Council, please do your own due diligence on this. Thank you. If I could present the picture now.
Sharon will come and be happy to get that from you, Mr. McKenzie. Just a quick question. So you've spoken to Kent and Rhonda and Lauren, and I would say, as it relates to roads, what was your response from Lauren? Oh, sorry, I didn't realize Lauren was here. I apologize. Welcome. Sorry, I thought you were on holidays. I apologize, Lauren. Thank you.
Your Worship and members of council, a couple of things I could advise council on. One thing that the city had in our capital roadworks program this year was rehabilitation of East Lake Crescent. And that was simply going to be a pavement rejuvenation, including any curb that's out there. Mr. McKenzie is correct in that he brought to TAC's attention and certainly others concerned with the loading unloading. From the city's perspective, we actually have backed up, and I think we reported on this in our last capital project update to Council Budget Committee and Council. We have put that project on hold. We have engaged our consultant to look at a number of different options, not only to address the actual parking or the loading, unloading activity that Mr. McKenzie has indicated, but what's also come to our attention is there's a likely deficiency in pedestrian crossings and pedestrian corridors, given that there's parking on the west side, and a lot of those folks who park on the west side are destined for the east side. So we do have a number of options and costing that we're looking at right now. We did present some concepts to our senior leadership team. Actually, it was only last week, and we hope to share those with council. We do want to just certainly give council, I guess, a heads up on what we're proposing. We do want to sit down with some of the business owners in that area after just sharing with council some of the concepts. We do think there's an opportunity there to enhance not only the pedestrian safety, but also the loading, unloading movements that Mr. McKenzie has brought to our attention as well. So we are trying to address that comprehensively. Again, we have deferred the project so we can investigate some of these other remediation options, and we have reported that in our capital project update to Council Budget Committee and Council as well. So that is in motion. We would hope that there's a viable project that would address that situation that we can present to Council in preparation for the 2018 capital budget.
Excellent. Thank you, Lauren. Any other questions for Lauren as it relates to this topic? No. So, Mr. McKenzie, as you can see, we're passing the photograph around and reading the information, and it sounds like we have a significant plan in play. So hopefully it'll be coming to council, as Lauren said, in the near future.
I thank you, and I thank Mr. Green there. He's looking after what should be.
Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Stevens, pardon.
Mr. Green's been gone a long time now, but he'd be happy that you remembered his name. I'll have to let him know.
Sorry, Lord.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Invite anybody else who'd like to come forward and ask any questions of council. Welcome.
Is this on?
Yep, red light's on.
Okay. My name, Mr. Mayor, Council, my name's Cal Johnston. I live in the Canals. I've been here before. Most of you know our situation. It's been continuing for well over a decade now, and we've taken all the advice that victims manuals, the police have given us. And as a result, I was arrested 3 times. My wife was arrested 4 times. Okay, my wife was arrested. My wife was assaulted by our neighbor with a leaf blower. There's a video of it. My wife defended herself, and they arrested her for an assault. Okay, the RCMP has 594 pages of correspondence between the city of Airdrie, the neighbors, themselves, and they put together all this stuff and arrested me for mischief. Now, this has been going on for a decade of this harassment, and they've collected all this information and arrested me for mischief. Okay. They added another 13 pages to that 594 pages of more complaints I made to that mischief to make sure I don't phone them again. Okay, one occasion, we were removed from our home. My wife was still in her pajamas, arrested, put in jail for 14 hours. Why? Because we attended court the previous day to witness justice, because this lady was in court, and they said we weren't allowed to be in court. Isn't that something? And as far as my lawyer says, we're allowed to go to court, we're allowed to go to church, we're allowed to do whatever we want, but they denied us our right to do that. They even showed up on the street and told me to go home because the neighbors said that they complained that we walked down the street. And a police car drove up beside me and told me to go home. I made a complaint against that police officer, and it's still there. They protect themselves or do whatever they do. Okay, we're both, we went to court. During that time we went to court, I was charged with failure to comply and brandishing a binder. That binder. That's what the police charged me with. Both of us. Okay, when we went to court, on these trumped-up charges, the Crown had false information that the police or someone supplied this false information that we did all this stuff. Okay, to deal with that false, or to fight the police, it would be $30,000, but to deal with it would be $4,000. It actually cost me $12,000 just to get a peace bond. If I was to fight it, it'd probably be about $90,000 to fight the police. Okay, we complied with the peace bond. However, the same neighbors continued with their antics, harassment, whatever, right to this day. They're still doing the same stuff to neighbors and everybody else, even though there's a peace bond in place. And it's not just with us. They're supposed to keep the peace around the neighborhood, and they are not doing that. Recently, they aimed a sprinkler at our garage window. I have it on video. They aimed it on a garage video. They stood out in front of our house and waited for us to come out so they can assault us. We stayed in the house, but I can't show the police this video because according to my peace bond, I'm not allowed to. Okay, we had some steps removed from the side of our house. They brought their sprinkler to the side of the house. They aimed it over the fence, 10 feet over the fence till it hit our bedroom windows, completely wiped out a big bloody mess. I took my cell phone, recorded the whole thing, captured a part of their house. I can't give that to the police. The contractor had to stop his work, could not work because of this stuff. I can't phone the police. I talked to Ottawa again to make another complaint. They said, you cannot go to the police with this video because they will arrest you. They put this whole thing together by false pretenses to make me stop phoning the police, and I still have this problem. The spotlights, everything continues, and the police will not do what they need to do. Okay. The sprinkler 10 feet onto our property. Stopped our contractors. I took a video of the incident, which I have in my pocket, but I can't show it to the police.
So, Mr. Johnson,
No,
there's a
no,
ton of...
I'm not finished yet.
No, if everyone knows the rules, there's 5 minutes. I just want to interrupt you. Please, just excuse me just 1 second. There's a lot going on in your statement, okay?
I only have 3 more things.
I realize that, but there's a lot going on there, and what you're asking from council is what?
Where do we go? I can't phone the police. Where do we go? The city and the police were involved in rewriting laws in which they're not supposed to do, and you know this. The no trespassing law was rewritten, even though a judge said that this law was lawful.
Just a second. Municipal law and criminal law, we have nothing to do with criminal law.
Well, you do, because it's all on paper.
Excuse me. The RCMP enforce criminal law. The legislation from the federal government and provincial jurisdictions. We have no jurisdiction over criminal law. Zero.
Well, I've got a lot of documentation that
Not,
said
not
that
as
you
it relates
guys
to the
were doing it.
RCMP. Not as it relates to the RCMP.
Well, Mr. Schultz sure signed a paper that actually said that
Well, and I
this
do
law-
apologize.
my signs have to come down, and
Okay, well, those are land use, right? Those are land use rules. It's not criminal. So
where am I supposed to go? If I can't phone the police, I pay taxes to be defended. My property's being destroyed right in front of my eyes. Everybody stands there, and they stand there and wait for us to come outside to beat us up. And you can't phone the police.
So you should be able to phone the police, 911.
I cannot phone the police.
Well,
They have arrested me for doing that.
That's something I can't, I don't believe we have our detachment commander here to answer that question. I cannot answer that question.
Well, I am 62 years old, and I went through a great sum of money to fight these bogus charges. A great sum. I'm not saying how much, but a lot of money. And where am I going to get $90,000 to fight the police? Where am I going to, like, what is this? I'm 62 years old. I'm supposed to be retired. These people don't even own the house. They try to sue us for money after she assaulted my wife right in front of it. They've done all this before, I'm sure of it.
So you have to appreciate we're not a court here.
Well, where am I going? What do I do?
We're hearing one side of a story, right?
Everybody says one side of the story, but there's many.
Yeah, I'm not having a conversation here, please. Okay, so it is one side of a story. Whether what you're saying is, I'm not suggesting it's wrong, right, or indifferent. It doesn't matter. We are not a court here. So the question is, you say, okay, so you should be, if you are under any threat whatsoever.
I'm on a lot of threats. I can't walk outside.
I know, I realize that.
He walks down the street with a can of bear spray.
Okay, so, excuse me, I appreciate that, but if, my understanding is, okay, that regardless of the individual, if you're under threat, you should be able to call 911 and someone will respond. I have to look.
I will not respond. I phoned 911 3 times one day. I recorded it. They have it. They did not come. I was chased into the house. There was a video of me and my wife chased into the house. We phoned 911.
Okay,
We have that recording.
what, okay, well, I'm going to have to, I can't answer the question tonight. There's a lot going on here. I need to talk to our detachment commander and find out if anyone in the community needs to call 911 for any reason, we should be responding. I don't know the legal, I realize you keep interrupting me. I'm sorry. I understand you're frustrated. Excuse me. You had 5 minutes to present. You've given us a tremendous amount of information, okay? You have asked a question. So if you just give me a day or two, I'd be happy to look into the details. We are not the RCMP. So I don't know what they've said to you, what they've done, what you're saying they've done. I don't know any of the details. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll get the information. I have your question, and I'll get an answer back for you. Okay, I know it is. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite anybody else who'd like to come forward and ask a question of council. Okay, there being none, we are going to move on with the agenda, and we're moving to 8.1, which has been postponed. And for those of you who are here for 8.1, we apologize. There was some, I think it was a newspaper, we were delayed. Is that right? Sorry, just for clarification, Sharon. No, sorry, 8.1, I apologize. 8.1 was because of not giving enough information on a timely fashion to the public as it relates to the public hearing.
According to the notes, there was an error in the public hearing advertisement, and so that's why
Perfect.
It'll come back.
So we're still rolling into first reading anyway, so we're moving on to bylaws number 9, 9.1, introductions. Councillor Coulson, please.
Thank you. We have William coming up to talk to us about a land use bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm here to present for first reading Bylaw B 17-2017, that being a land use bylaw amendment in phases 21 and 26 of Cooper's Crossing. As soon as my little pointer starts to work anyway. There we go. So this application for rezoning respects 26 lots in phases 21 and 26 of Cooper's Crossing. The proposal is to rezone these properties from their current zoning of R2, low density residential, to a zoning of R1, single detached residential. The area in red at the side of council's screen that's there will show the subject area as well as the surrounding subdivision. And the intention is to develop these lots as single detached dwellings rather than semi-detached, which was originally envisioned under the R2 zoning. One question that came up when this was presented at Planning Commission was with regard to the 2 lots immediately west of the subject area in red, just at the bottom of the area shown there. Those were not included as a semi-detached dwelling had already been constructed on those properties. Just to give a brief overview here for Council tonight, as we are just here for first reading, and this will be back in front of Council on July the 4th. Planning staff and administration have undergone a review of the proposal. It meets all of our policy requirements under the Airdrie City Plan, the Cooper's Crossing Neighbourhood Structure Plan, as well as the Airdrie 1 Sustainability Plan. The rezoning does not propose any change to the density of the subdivision, to the number of units, or the overall lot dimensions and sizes. These 26 properties have already been subdivided, and it's simply changing them to be able to accommodate single detached dwellings instead of semi-detached duplexes. This is actually still stays consistent with the neighborhood plans. As you see on the right of your screen, in the neighborhood plan, it designated this area for either single family or semi-detached. And the properties as they are subdivided already meet all of the zoning requirements for the new land use district. So the proposal was brought before Planning Commission on their meeting of June 1st. There was the one question about those two properties just to the immediate west of the subject area, but with that being cleared up, Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend the application for approval by council. As had already come up just before I took my seat here, the public hearing on this bylaw was intended to be presented tonight. However, the one property just on the bottom left of Cooper's Cove Southwest was unfortunately omitted from the original advertising notice. The mapping just missed picking up that one. But we have it re-advertised, we have all the information correct, and we're hoping to bring that back forward to council for the public hearing on July the 4th. Nonetheless, we'd like to get first reading tonight to avoid any sort of situation where we would need to get the unanimous vote for third reading. So with all of that being said, there's three alternatives in front of council this evening. First, to give first reading to the proposed land use rezoning. Second being that council tabled the bylaw, subject to any changes or additional information or clarification that council may request of administration. Or third, that council defeats bylaw B17 2017. Administration supports this application and recommends that council provide first reading to the bylaw. That concludes my presentation.
Thanks, William. Sorry, Councillor Hunter, please.
Yeah, can you just go back to the red blotch there? Yeah, right there. So just for point of clarification, the two on the left there, that's already developed, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. That's already been developed with a semi-detached dwelling.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
It's an interesting blotch. Okay, any other questions for William? I believe this went through MPC, correct, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Your Worship. Unanimous.
Unanimous, yes, thank you. Okay, looks good to me, so let's call Councillor Coulson, please.
First reading of bylaw B17 2017, Your Worship.
Thank you. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, William. All right, we're moving on to number 10, 10.1. We'd like to invite Sharon to come forward. And this is around the amendment to procedure bylaw. Sharon, welcome.
Your Worship, members of council, I'm here asking council to give three readings to bylaw B16 2017, and this is a bylaw to amend the procedure bylaw. And the purpose behind this was back in May, council had considered a number of ways to deal with impromptu motions and had asked us to come back with a procedure around a notice of resolution. So the reason it's called notice of resolution and not a notice of motion is because the way our bylaw is structured, it refers to a resolution rather than a motion. So I understand some of you might be missing the report. It was on the website, but it seems to be missing from some of the iPads. So I just thought I'd run through the procedure just a little bit so that council is clear on how this process will work. So what this will do is this will allow a resolution to be introduced at the council table, and it will follow at the next meeting for formal discussion. What this does at the end of the day is it gives council a couple weeks to decide whether or not they wish to proceed with the motion that is being proposed. So how this would work, and we've based this on processes used by other municipalities, is the councillor wishing to do so would bring a notice of resolution forward, and they could do that at any point in the meeting when it's warranted. So we would ask that the councillor write their notice of resolution down just purely so that we make sure we capture the essence of it and that it gets read into the minutes at the appropriate time, and then that resolution would get presented to us so that we can make sure, as I said, our minutes appropriately reflect what the councillor wishes. So this will give sufficient detail so that the subject of the resolution and any proposed action can easily be determined. And then, as I said, that resolution will come back at the next meeting. No action will be taken on the resolution until it is passed at the following meeting. And of course, if it's defeated, then it would die on the floor. There's a couple of housekeeping items within the bylaw itself. One is the definition of city clerk needs to be amended because I'm no longer the manager of legislative services. And the second piece is we have never made provision within the bylaw for the video streaming of council meetings. And so that is taken care of in this bylaw as well. So you do have three alternatives. You could proceed and give 3 readings to the bylaw. This would indicate that you support the decision that was made back in May and you're comfortable with the housekeeping matters. You could choose to amend the bylaw, or you could choose to defeat it, and if you chose to defeat it, then it would mean that council's comfortable with the status quo, and in effect, it would not put any teeth to the motion that was made back in May. And all it would mean for the housekeeping items is we would bring them forward at the organizational meeting in October. So should council wish to proceed with the bylaw, we would advertise it in the City Connection, and typically all bylaws are advertised in the new laws to know. So at this point, we are asking council to give 3 readings to bylaw B16, and as I mentioned, that'll make provision for a notice of resolution process. It will amend the definition of city clerk, and it will make provision for the video streaming of council meetings. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Sharon. Questions for Sharon, please. Yes, Councillor Coulson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair, I didn't see anything about an email notice of motion. So is that, are we trying to stay away from, let's say, prior to the meeting, councillor has something come up or thinks about what happened in a previous meeting, would they be able to email that notice of motion and still get it on the agenda versus waiting until the next meeting to give you a notice of motion?
So with respect to the email items, we're technically dealing with those as an electronic form of meeting. So those still could come forward to be ratified at that time as the resolution later tonight is being asked to be handled.
Okay.
There's no provision at this point for anything to be circulated by email in advance to make it on the agenda. The way the bylaw currently reads is it needs to be on the agenda to formally be considered. And for council, if you're not aware, that process takes place about 10 days prior to the actual council meeting that agenda is finished and sent out.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine with it. I had one more question, and it's escaped me now. So I'll keep it to myself.
Okay, if you think of it, just hit your light. Any other comments or questions? Everybody's comfortable with this, I guess is the question to council. Everyone will be supporting. I don't see any lights on. Sorry, Councillor Chapman.
Your Worship, I was just going to make a motion for first reading of bylaw B16, 2017.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions before I move forward? Okay, there being none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Deputy Mayor Burley, please.
Second reading, Your Worship.
Thank you. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Haig, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to request permission for third.
Thank you. All those in favor? It is unanimous. And finally, Councillor Coulson, please.
Final reading of bylaw B16, 2017.
Excellent. Thank you. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. So Sharon, we're on 101, or say, I'm sure it's 10.2. 10.2, I'd like you to stay forward and talk about the elected officials' code of conduct. Please, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This particular item is one council has been working on for a period of time. Most recently, they held a workshop with respect to reviewing the various pieces that could be included within a code of conduct bylaw. Council currently has a code of conduct bylaw, and that's B43, 2015, and that was passed in September of 2015. And there have been a number of discussions over the past couple of years with respect to making the code of conduct more robust. There is requirement within the new MGA for a code of conduct. At this time, we're still waiting on the regulations to see what the specifics are. But what council has worked with is the information that has been provided through workshops done with Brownlee LLP regarding the various components that they would suggest be held within a code of conduct bylaw. And those particular items are listed in the report. And at this point, council has included every recommended section with the exception of dealing with election campaigns, and council felt that the current manner in which we're dealing with election campaigns is sufficient at this point of time. So you have a number of alternatives. Council could choose to maintain the status quo and not amend your current code of conduct bylaw. That would mean that you would defeat this particular bylaw at first reading. You could choose to adopt the code of conduct bylaw, and that would indicate that you feel that a more robust code of conduct is required at this time. You could decide to amend that code of conduct, or you could direct us as staff to go away and come back with some information or some provisions that you think are perhaps missing. And so once council decides what they would like to do with this particular bylaw, Ledge Services would work with corporate communications to come up with a plan to basically let the public know what's happening with the code of conduct bylaw. And at this time, based on the workshop, council's being asked to give 3 readings to bylaw B20 2017, which is a bylaw to establish a new code of conduct and actually repeal the previous bylaw. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Sharon. We have Councillor Chapman up first, please.
Thank you, Worship. Through the chair, Sharon, this bylaw is written now, and I'm in support of it. The only question I have is, has it been circulated to our board members to read through this and get their, because now we are including our council board members in this bylaw as well, not just council members.
So this bylaw has not been circulated to board members from the perspective that this bylaw is actually a bylaw that is written by council for council, and council is choosing to extend it to its boards, commissions, and committees. So if council wished us to take that step to circulate it, we could. Or what we were planning to do is once the bylaw is in effect, we would then meet with all of the boards, commissions, and committees and present to them what is actually in the bylaw.
I'm wondering what the feel of my council colleagues are. These are council board members, and we go to them quite regularly for input of matters. I'm just wondering what everybody else thinks about getting their input on this bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Hunter.
So, given the conduct, given the controversy, and given the what would we say, allegations of unethical behavior, et cetera, by not only members of this council, but potentially members of other boards, et cetera, I think it would be remiss that we didn't circulate to all of the members who are volunteers on all of the boards. And so, you know, I have a number of questions about it, but again, for it not to be included in board, any of our boards, to me, is not going to serve the public well, is not going to serve the board well, nor this council. I have a couple of concerns with some of the remedial or restrictions that have been put in place. And I guess my question would be, so if a council, whether it be this council, a future council, was to take some type of action in regards to, for example, councillors, it gives council the ability to restrict or limit the councillor's powers, such as chairing council committee meetings, restrict the councillor her communications with administration and third parties, such as provincial or federal government and other municipalities. I would have charter challenges with that, because as a citizen of Canada, I would expect that I have the right to communicate with the federal government or provincial government, and to have a municipal government restrict my ability to have those conversations with other levels of government, in my mind, would certainly be. I had a very brief conversation with the Centre for Constitutional Justice, but I have concerns with that piece. And I don't know that the city's legal folks have taken it down that path, but I certainly can't support it until I get some good, solid answers on that. happy with the intent of it. It's to, that council conducts themselves in a manner that is fitting for the role that we take, and I understand that, but there are challenges, and we need to make sure that the rights of the citizens are protected, the rights of individual council members and council as a whole. It does address, part of it says that we've got the ability to do some things to people that sit on boards. If we find that they're in default, it would seem to me that passing something without going to all of those boards and letting them know what those things are, what potentially could come of that, to me would be, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. So I would certainly support this going to the other boards to have a chance for them to read it, comment, come back to whether it be staff or to come back to us with their comments, concerns regarding those pieces of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coulson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So through the chair, I understand what you're saying, Councillor Hunter, but I can't find it right now because it's a long document, but somewhere in here it did state that as long as you're representing yourself and not the opinions of council as a whole, that you would still be able to have those meetings. Is that correct, Sharon? That's how I interpreted it, as long as you're not introducing yourself as Councillor so-and-so representing the city of Airdrie without the authority under council to be the spokesperson, which in this case is the mayor. But.
Through the chair, council is only able to sanction a councillor for their duties as a councillor, and with respect to Councillor Hunter's comments regarding sanctions and potential charter challenge, I do not believe at this point in time that a charter challenge has been conducted, but I do know that the whole premise of sanctions and the placing of sanctions on a councillor and the subsequent consequences of those have been upheld in the courts. And so I do know those particular sections have been.
So sorry, through the chair, just for clarification, a council member's hands wouldn't be tied if they wanted to say, set up a meeting as a citizen with a provincial or federal representative. So that's within the bylaw, as long as they are stating that they are there on behalf of themselves, not on behalf of the city of Airdrie or council boards.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. Councillor Coulson, just do you want to comment on Councillor Chapman's request to go to the boards first? He was asking for that opinion as well, if you don't mind.
I would hate to see this have to be debated over and over again. This is what, the third time in 3 years that a code of conduct has come back to this council. I understand extending it to the boards. I've read through it. I mean, to act with integrity, professionalism, and respect when interacting with each other, I think that's fair. I don't know that it needs to be circulated among the boards. I think letting them know that we have extended our expectation of professionalism is warranted, but.
Fair enough. Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Hick, please.
So I guess my question would be, like in terms of timing, that yes, we've been part of a workshop. We've had people who are members of our boards who have joined, been through whatever orientation happens with the departments that those board members are associated with, and I'm not sure in all those orientations if anything like this has been presented to them. So I feel like I'm in agreement with Councillor Chapman and Hunter in terms of getting some feedback on it. We've been part of it. I'm not sure the boards necessarily need to have a vote on it. I mean, ultimately, we will decide what will happen with this. But I think if it's something that maybe is left until the next council coming in, as far as when it's applied, then the new board members coming on at that time when those boards are appointed could all go through some type of orientation in regards to this. So I have a question, if I could ask.
Please.
Your Worship. So if that were to happen in terms of sharing it with the boards, what would we look at for timelines? Would that put it into sort of the fall of 2017?
Depending on, through the chair, depending on how council wished us to pursue that, if they wished us to send it out to the board members for their comment, either through a survey tool or through correspondence from the mayor. Probably could be back in September. If council is looking for us to attend the various board, committee, and commission meetings to present with the councillors on that board to the members, I would suspect you absolutely, it will be tough to make it before the election.
Thank you, Sharon. Councillor Hunter.
So through the chair, you had alluded to successful charter challenges have been upheld. Can you give me an example, please, regarding this particular bylaw where that has been upheld? Because it's my understanding in challenging the Constitution, it's an expensive and time-consuming process. It's expensive, and when I've had questions previously, in my role on council, I was told that you have the ability to go out there and hire yourself a lawyer and go down that path. Well, I can certainly tell you that hiring a lawyer based on a part-time councillor's salary is absolutely not possible. And the chances so if I was to mount a charter challenge today and had the wealth to do that, the chances of getting it in front of the court before my retirement or maybe my demise would not be likely. So I would like to hear of an example of where this type of thing has been upheld, because again, as I said, my research has told me that the ability of a municipal creation of the provincial government to take away so if I'm going to go to the federal government, I'm going to go either on my own behalf or on behalf of a citizen. We heard a citizen tonight that had concerns about RCMP, et cetera, and so as an advocate for citizens, regardless of what level of government that I serve, I don't believe that a municipal government or a council of any kind should have the ability to take away my right or any citizen's right to go to another level of government for rights and remedies, and I would like an example of where that's happened, and as you spoke to, please.
Through the chair. So I do want to reiterate that I do not believe it was a charter challenge that actually occurred. So basically how it works is the MGA gives you certain duties once you're elected as a councillor. Those duties provided to you by the MGA cannot be taken away. So it's all of the extra things that can be taken away or can be sanctioned. So probably one of the most groundbreaking isn't the right word, but one of the biggest precedents that has been set would have been there were some allegations about misbehavior on behalf of the mayor in Fort Macleod, and he was stripped of all his duties as mayor and was permitted only to serve as a councillor, given those duties as an elected official. And so that was taken to the courts, and it was upheld by the courts that the council was perfectly within their rights to levy those sanctions and take those powers away from the mayor.
Don't look at me. I've been there.
So through the chair, can you tell me if that particular case, without giving away a lot of information we don't need to have, was that in relation to fiduciary or criminal offenses?
I do not believe any of those were criminal. It was, if my recollection is correct, it was more around the mayor acting inappropriately.
Okay, and so through the chair, I guess, so if I'm recalling the right one, it was inappropriate around some decisions around, I believe it, I can't get too far into it, but around friends or people, associates, et cetera. But again, I do not, and I'm not comfortable supporting it until I've had a legal opinion, which I've asked for the municipal government to take away my ability to go to the province or go to the federal government. So, until I get that, I certainly can't support that.
Okay, very clearly stated. Councillor Belk, please.
Thank you. First of all, I'd support tabling this until all the board members got a vision of this and were able to comment on it. And secondly, through the chair to Sharon, point out 517.3. That paragraph, it says subject to paragraph 516.4, and I'm not seeing a 516.4. Maybe that's just a little housekeeping issue that I noticed.
You are correct. That should read 517.4. You are correct.
Very good. Just like to point that out. Thank you.
Excellent. Sharon, just a couple of questions. So I'm fine with tabling, and honestly, it's not a very detailed document. I don't know how many pages is it? 13 pages. I think if we emailed it to all the boards and asked them to review it, if they had any concerns to email us back, at least they have an opportunity to review it. That's sufficient in my mind. My question is enforcement. So who is the determinant? Who holds the trial, and how does all that come together? So who determines, and then we kind of know what enforcement looks like, but there was a couple of items in there that says zero tolerance, I think, and I can't find the paragraph it's associated to, but I guess that's my question is who's going to be administering the jury as it relates to any kind of issues with any member of council or administration or any one of our boards?
Through the chair,
it's not, sorry, and just because I'm hearing people say council. It's not council. What if the information's coming from administration? So they're taking information from administration or from the public, and they're making a determinant. So, yeah, you have council has the final decision, I guess. But how does the legitimacy of the proceedings work? That's my question. It's not really outlined in what's been proposed here, as it relates to sort of how this will unfold. Is it a majority of vote? I'm assuming it is, but just sort of that logistical side, Sharon. So I know that's a rounded question, but just curious to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
So basically, the compliance piece is dealt with, Your Worship, in Section 7. And so if there's an awareness around a violation, the first step, of course, would be to speak with the person directly. Subsequently, they would discuss the concern of the violation with the mayor or the deputy mayor. And in the case of a board, it would be with the chair or the vice chair. And then where it's warranted, that would then go to the whole of the council at an in-camera session, and then council would make that decision.
And I know that. So the question is, who determines when it's warranted? When that's where I'm confused. What warrants that movement? Sorry, go ahead, please.
Your Worship, that would be City Council who would make that determination whether or not, once they received a complaint, whether or not there was action required on that complaint.
Okay, that clarifies that for me. Thank you. Councillor Hunter, something new? Or
as always.
Okay, thank you.
So, through the chair, so let's fast forward, and council has decided in their wisdom that someone is guilty of an offense under this bylaw and passes sentence. What are the rights and remedies of the individual that's been convicted, and the right to go back and ask for redress if they feel that they have been wrongly convicted?
Through the chair, the whole bylaw is based on the premise that council polices themselves. And so if a majority of council were to pass a resolution to levy a sanction, then that sanction would hold as any majority vote of council. It would currently work the same way as any motion for reconsideration. If the person felt that there was an error, they'd need to convince one person on the prevailing side, who would then be able to have the investigation reopened. But it would be, I would suspect, if it was something significant enough that council felt an investigation was warranted, they would more than likely bring in a third party to conduct that investigation. All parties would be heard from, and then it would be a majority vote of council as to what they chose to do with that particular incident.
So, through the chair, I understand what would happen and how it would work for them to get to that point. Again, the question was, so in the event that an individual feels that they have been unfairly accused, convicted, and sentence passed, what would be the remedy for redress? Would it be a judicial review? Would it have to go to courts to overturn? What would be the redress for that, please?
Through the chair, if the councillor were not successful in getting a reconsideration at the next meeting, then absolutely any recourse would be through the courts.
And so through the courts, through the chair, I guess the ability to fund that would be the individual's responsibility, correct? And then they could seek damages if it was overturned?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman, please. Sorry, do you have another comment, Councillor Wilson?
He would have been first.
Okay,
I was just going to say I wasn't looking for a real in-depth to meet with all the boards. I like the idea of sending out an email. Here is a bylaw that council is considering. It does include our boards. If there is some way that, if there was any concerns, just to reply and report back to them. If we got the replies, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'm certain that, like I said, it's not a real 13 pages. This is pretty quick to review. Councillor Coulson.
Thank you, Worship. I like the idea of a survey. That's easy. Then if somebody is upset with it, their name doesn't have to be attached to it. It can be more confidential. But so just going back to what would happen, I guess I'm not so much worried about council because we're here, we have microphones, we can hit them and speak in a public realm. But if a board member felt like they were being unjustly served, what would their recourse be? Like, I understand that we don't have it laid out clearly within the bylaw. We were provided with numerous other bylaws to look over, and I can't recall if they had laid it out as well or if they basically just left it up to council to decide.
Through the chair, I can't recall whether those bylaws actually extended to committee members as well off the top of my head. I can't remember that. So there are the abilities listed within the board members. I think the really important piece to remember is board members sit at the pleasure of council. And so council every year reviews those appointments and they have the ability to reappoint or disappoint. And so this really is putting some interim steps in measure between that appointing a board member and at the end of the day going to perhaps the extreme measure of rescinding that appointment. And so this gives some interim steps for council should they wish to work with an individual board member. But would they have the recourse of court? Absolutely. Would they be able to seek damages? Absolutely. Would that most likely occur? Probably not.
Would they have the through the chair, would they have the opportunity if they felt they were being unjustly treated by a member of council to approach all of council to have the code of conduct then instigated as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and any member of the public would as well.
Absolutely.
So it would just be a letter to all of council that I'm requesting you to look at this code of conduct bylaw. I believe there was an infraction. Council would then take it, review it, and decide, move forward if they feel that there should be any action taken against it?
Yes, through the chair. It would follow the same process as it would for council. Council would make a determination as to whether an investigation was warranted and then would proceed down that path.
I guess for the sake of transparency, we're missing a little piece there for procedure. So if a member of the public thought that a member of council broke the code of conduct bylaw, what would the steps be? I'm sorry, I don't see that clearly laid out in this bylaw. I think it would be great to have a little more clarity around what the steps would be given the concerns that have been raised tonight. I see. Private verbal written warning, public written warning, and/or the censure motion. So is that how we're going then? You would just contact council. They would decide if they need a written warning or an investigation. So it's up to council. At the end of the day, it's always up to council.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coulson. Councillor Chapman, I don't think there's any more lights on if you want to move forward with your motion.
Your worship, I will make the motion to table bylaw B 202017 for further information and feedback from our members at large of our boards, our council boards. As we discussed via email, nothing, with a survey, nothing real in depth, unless it warrants it if we hear a whole bunch back from them that they want a meeting.
So within the motion, are you hoping that we can send it out immediately and then we can address this at the next council meeting?
Yeah, and send it out immediately, and if we can address it, well, as soon as possible. Probably not the next council meeting.
Sharon's not nodding her head.
Yeah, I understand it will take some time.
What do you think for time frame, Sharon? Sorry.
Through your worship, the earliest would be the August meeting.
August meeting, okay. Fair enough, because we only have one more meeting before the summer break, so.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Carrie, you're clear on the motion? Okay. Any more questions or comments? There being none, all those in favor? All those opposed? One opposed, Councillor Coulson, and it's carried. From there, we're moving on to, thank you, Sharon. We have no financial position tonight. Business arising, agenda reports, there being none. Correspondence. Actually, before we do correspondence, I think Councillor Coulson, just because we have members of the library board here and our executive director, I thought it'd be good to put that motion on the floor from Budget Committee today, if that would be all right, please.
Is this where you would like this motion to go? I thought it was board member reports.
It's under, yeah, we can put it.
Through the chair, if possible, because of the way the minuting function works in our software, if you could please leave it under board member reports, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, didn't realize it was that complicated. 14.1, Councillor, sorry. So we have a letter of correspondence. Who wants to discuss that? Sharon, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Your Worship, members of council, you have two pieces of correspondence this evening. The first is a request for a letter of support from the Airdrie Over 50 Club. They're looking for council support for an application to the Horizon Grant for $25,000 to report worn and cracked broken card tables and chairs. And the second piece of correspondence is from the Airdrie District Community Foundation, and they're looking for letters of support for their application to the District Community Foundation for a Canada 150 grant in the amount of $25,000. And that one is for 150 banners to celebrate the 150th anniversary. This one was circulated by email, and council is being asked to ratify their decision.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharon. If there are no comments and questions, we'll go with the motion. Councillor Hunter.
So through the chair. There we go, through the chair. Before I make that motion, I would like to also say I got a last minute correspondence, and through the permission of the chair, I'd like to read that once we finish these. I would make a motion that we provide a letter of support for the Over 50 Club for their support of the application for Horizon Grant for one-time funding in the amount of $25,000 to replace worn out and broken equipment at that club.
Okay. Excellent. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Coulson, please.
Thank you, Worship. Motion to ratify the letter of support for the Airdrie District Community Foundation's application for the Canada 150 grant in the amount of $25,000.
Excellent. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. And sorry, yes, thank you, Sharon. So we're going to be going under board member reports. I'm starting with Councillor Coulson today.
You had correspondence.
Oh, correspondence for...
Yeah, so through the chair, I received the letter last minute. It was from a resident through another resident, and they asked if we could read it during public question period, but of course that's not part of the what we do. So with your permission, I'd like to read the letter. It's
sorry, just so Sharon, can I get a point of clarification? So if this letter was addressed to you and you alone?
No, so it came to me tonight. They wanted to know how they would bring this forward procedurally. Originally, they were going to come to a public question period and bring the things up in that, and I said, well, yeah, you can do that. So they
Sorry, was the
make it,
letter addressed to you or to all of council?
to whom it may concern, and I'm happy to forward that to all members of council.
Sorry, the letter,
Came to me as to whom it may concern. So
okay.
the intent, I believe the intent was to go to all of council.
Okay, so why don't we just forward it all to council and then review it under correspondence next week, or at the next meeting? That's what I'd like to look at it first, if that's all right. Sharon, I'm just curious on the procedure on that. We don't get asked that too often. I think one other time. Because I haven't seen the letter. I don't know if anybody else other than Councillor Hunter have seen the letter.
Typically, through the chair, your worship, typically we do have a formal process on how correspondence gets onto the council agenda, and it does need to be received in our office prior to the agenda going out, and it gets concluded on
In
the
the
agenda.
package ahead of, yep. So if that's okay with you, Councillor Hunter, we'd like to do that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Coulson, please.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick motion that council directs staff to amend the 2017 operating budget to allocate up to $144,710 in grant funding to the Airdrie Public Library for additional space, with those monies coming out of the operating reserve.
Just for members of the public who are on our council budget committee, how much square footage was it? 1,900, is that right?
1,900 square feet.
1,900, great. Excellent. Any questions or comments? There being none, all those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Anything else to report, Councillor Coulson? Deputy Member Burley.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple things. We all received in our council correspondence about the parade needing volunteers for Canada Day.
Yep.
So I just want to put that call out there to anyone that wants to help out. You can still see the parade. Matter of fact, you probably get a better spot if you're manning a barricade than you would anywhere else in the parade route. So it's good to volunteer. As well, with the mayor and a number of other council members, was able to attend the Airdrie Links Air Cadets annual ceremonial review. First time I'd been able to attend that, and that was amazing. And two of the individuals were 5 years, I believe it was, without missing a meeting, an event, or whatever. They were there for 5 consecutive years, which I thought was great. As well, during Seniors Week at the Seniors Luncheon, it was a great event as well. And to see the same familiar faces year after year, that's a good thing when you're honoring seniors. So it was a good event.
Thank you. Councillor Haig, please. Thank you. Councillor Hunter, please.
To the chair, just I'd like to comment on my trip to FCM. Very disappointing on a lot of fronts. I've since communicated that to FCM on their organizational abilities to get people to and from the tours, missed buses, wrong dates. Very, very disappointing, but making the best of it. I can say that I made some inroads on some issues that are near and dear to me. Had a very productive meeting on behalf of some local veterans with the Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs. That was very, very promising meeting, and got some resources for some of our local veterans to help them in their times of need, and so that part was great. The networking with some of the councillors across. It's interesting to see the regional differences and how one part of the country feels that everything's just fine and tickety-boo and money's in the bank, and then it seems as you move across the west, it's the Great Divide is more than just a geographical landmark. But yeah, again, it was. I've been to a number of them, and I was very, very disappointed on the organizational parts of it. But some of it was quite good and quite eye-opening, and some of it not so much. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bellick, please.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind everyone that the Mayor's State of the City address is on Wednesday morning, and I'm excited to hear from the Mayor the state of the city in Wednesday morning's address.
I'm sure it'll be different than what you already know, but Councillor Chapman, I'm not going to be introducing any new things, but thank you for that.
Thank you, Worship. I would like to echo Councillor Hunter's concerns about FCM. I, as well, will be sending a review back of the conference. I've been to a few of them, and this one I did feel was not as well organized as it should be. But I do have to give kudos to our waste and recycling staff. I had booked a study tour to see a waste facility in Ottawa, and I was expecting something state of the art. Well, quite excited to get on this bus. We went to a landfill. And they showed us in the meeting room a bird. They brought out a falcon that they have hired, a falconer, whatever you call them, to hunt seagulls with this bird. And it was a very nice bird, quite intimidating. Then I asked them about what their diversion rates were. They were quite happy that they had a 50% diversion rate. We're shooting for an 80% diversion rate. I asked them what their bag limit was, and they informed me they have a 6-bag limit, but they don't enforce it at all. If somebody puts out 10 bags, they'll take them. And so I let them know that, well, with a bag limit like that, you're not going to get any better than 50%. And then we had another tour and it was listed as a Gatineau recycling plant, and they called it a plant. And that was about a 40-minute bus ride to get there. And we got there, and it was a parking lot not any bigger than our East Side Recycling Center, and that's all it was a depot. Their oil collection was a 45-gallon drum. They had styrofoam that was just going in the garbage, and I said, well, you don't recycle styrofoam? Oh, no, there's no place. You can't recycle styrofoam. So I had to tell them, yes, packaging styrofoam, you can. You might want to check into it a little bit. So it was very disappointing, but I just want to give kudos to our waste and recycling staff. Great job with the diversion we're doing in Airdrie, and for the residents of Airdrie, great job. We made Ottawa look real bad when it comes to recycling.
We love Ottawa, though. Other than a few things. Just want to let everyone know that this coming Saturday at 9:30, we're going to be giving a little send-off to Mike Lohman, who's walking from High Level to Airdrie, which is quite an extensive walk on behalf of mental health and addictions, and it's great, and it coincides with our council's mandate to declare Airdrie Mental Health Month in June, so it's excited to do that. So if you're available, it starts at 9:30, and he is driving up to High Level, so I want to thank Mike for that. I did participate in a ton of seniors events, emceed 7 years in a row now, actually, the seniors event Councillor Brody was talking about, and it's great to see a lot of familiar faces for sure. We have some incredible seniors in this community. If you get a minute, go to Fletcher, go to Cedarwood, go to Bethany, and just talk to some people. You'd be amazed who you're going to be talking to and what they've done in their lives. It's pretty incredible to see. I was the inaugural reviewing officer for the Sea Cadets, a new organization in Airdrie that was founded by two ladies from Airdrie, and I want to really congratulate them. Amazing young people, and again, they're the future. And again, I was obviously been going to the Air Cadets forever, and they do an awesome job. I want to remind everybody, get online, check out what's going on Canada Day. There's a tremendous amount going on. Obviously, we have Canada Day festivities. The parade starts early, but there's events all day. There are different venues throughout the city. We have our rodeo obviously going on then, but the festivities get started at Chinook Winds Park at 3 o'clock. I believe, Linda, all the information is on our website, correct, of the day and what's happening in the community? Yep, excellent. So keep your eyes open and help us celebrate, in my mind, the best country in the world. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I want to thank the Airdrie Parade and Fireworks Committee. I want to thank this council for the extra dollars to support the event. I think it's really appropriate. I want to thank this council for supporting the initiative of the 150 committee. I think you're going to be very impressed with what they're going to be doing on behalf of those dollars and that initiative. It's going to be exciting times over the next couple of weeks, and just looking forward to having lots of fun and just watching our communities celebrate Airdrie style. Lots of safe, fun family entertainment, and it's going to be great. So again, want to thank also administration. All of our leaders are here. I want to thank you guys and your staffs, because I know there'll be a lot of work put out there. Garbage cans and street sweeping and all the other things that we do, keeping us safe. I really want to thank all of you, and just looking forward to the first with great excitement. So thank you very much. And from there, I'll turn over to Paul for... Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Haig.
So just, and of course, a reminder that there's a rodeo going on around that time too?
Yeah, no, I said rodeo on that day, sorry. And it's prior to that day that the rodeo starts. That's the final day, the closing day. So, and it is one of the the top rodeos in Canada, actually. So if you haven't got anything to do, you want to go there. It's a great show. Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Worship. Just amazed that there's actually only one follow-up item, so if you have any questions, let me know.
Actually, so are we. All of council is the same way, Mr. Schultz. That's the lowest it's ever been since council follow-up started. So congratulations. Any comments for Mr. Schultz? Okay, there being none from there, we are moving on to adjournment. Item 17. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Kerry. Thanks, everybody.